Didn't you do like try a switch half on beam or something, or a popa? You told me you got up there and did something and you had great amplitude, but not great split.
Girls were blown away that I didn't split the beam. I didn't tell them this, but I knew in my head I was like 1.5% from splitting the beam, and that I would have never lived that down. Yeah. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to our mini-sode podcast with your favorites, Nicole Langevin and Justin Spring.
Yeah. Hi, Justin.
Hey, we're here and we're doing a thing.
And you sound so professional.
Well, at some point you got to class it up a bit. We can't just drop in on 100th episode and think you're gonna just
get away unscathed.
Scrap a 100th episode together. We're like this came with slightly more preparation.
Although I don't know if it would have been as funny with prep. I think the way that it just happened, and hopefully that's what's going to happen right now. Some magic. So welcome to a show where we answer the age-old question: whose Chenko is it really?
That's my Chenko.
It's your Chenko.
This got two thumbs.
This guy's Chenko.
It could just be an ambiguous Chenko. It could be an amorphous. It could go either way.
It is a Chenko.
It's a Chenko.
I don't even have a Chenko to necessitate your Chenko or my Chenko. That is for our Wayne's World friends. Okay, so Justin, as everybody knows, we come from two similar yet very different worlds.
Yeah, you can say that.
The men's and the women's. And we've had a lot of conversations about the similarities and the differences. Some things we agree upon, some things we definitely don't. And now you're in this world of women's gymnastics, which is so fun for me to watch. It really is. Yeah. So I have a question for you then.
Okay.
Actually, you guys haven't started competing yet, have you?
We've been through a year. I'm in my 14th month here at Alabama.
Okay. My timeline's all screwed up.
I've been through a full calendar year within the program. So I've seen it all. That's not to say that I'm a master of anything, but yes.
Okay. So tell me the difference going into warm-ups at a competition as a men's coach versus a women's coach. Now, this is both on the collegiate level. I want to hear if these are as different as they look at the elite level.
Well, so again, I have to acknowledge that my role changed dramatically as well. I went from a head coach to an assistant coach. So that I think that has been the one separator for me that makes it hard to define truly what are the differences. Now, with that said, there's certainly some observable differences when I just have my eyes open and I look around. There's a lot more. There's a rollout. Like there is a minute to minute. It feels more like a TV show, and you're prepping, and then commercial break, and then we have like women's meets are to the T, like to the minute, and you gotta be ready and hustle. And I think with that comes maybe a little bit more drilling, like as far as like making sure we're prepared for that. And so because when like that timeline starts, there's no stopping it because TV's involved. The other teams, they've read the rule book, they know exactly what's to happen. Whereas a men's meet, it's like half of our intro, we walk up to each other and we're like, what time's warm-up start again? And we're like, I don't know, ask the event management guy. And he's like, I don't know, it's on the paper. I emailed you guys like months ago and then two weeks ago. And then like yesterday, and they're like, you sent me an email? I'm like, yeah. And you're like that's more of a typical men's.
Right. You can end the sentence right there.
Yeah.
That's more of a typical men's.
That's
but also, I mean, maybe that's also the difference when something's getting highly broadcasted versus something that's not.
Right. And that's where I say, I don't know if it's fair to say that the only difference is because it's a men's meet versus a women's meet. Like, I think out of necessity, women meets have had to become more structured, more organized, because like, that's a huge part of the show is that we fit a perfect time slot to our time slot to include time to elaborate, play, video replay, and kind of set the moment, if you will, of that broadcast. And so it's perfect. You got an hour and 20 minutes of gymnastics in a 2-hour time slot. Makes for a great show. Men's gym, you got 3 hours of gymnastics crammed into a 2-hour and 20 time slot. And TV's like, what do we do with this?
So what about, I want to know like the actual, when you get into the gym, the expectation of what you're actually supposed to do at warm up. Because this has come up before. And when on my show, when I had Blaine on, we had this whole conversation about like, them being at Worlds and like the guys sitting in a circle, just like rolling their ankles around. And then they're looking at the girls going like turn after turn after turn. And then like Anya Hatch is out and this one's out and that one's out. And he's like, why did that was during podium training and warm-ups. Like, was that necessary?
You gave it your all an hour and a half before the meet started. Like, why did we do that? Yeah. I think that so it's funny. We do coffee with the coaches. It's our athletes come in, and then we had that this morning with 2 of my athletes, and I was like, what do you think some of the differences are between men's and women's gymnastics? And this was the first thing out of their mouth was like, guys warm up their routines like it's the first time they've ever tried it. Like, and I'm like, that's not true. And then I'm like, it does appear that way though. I will say that was a big push in my Illinois program, was like every time you do a skill, it is in the bucket of muscle memory of the way that you want it or the way that you don't want it. And so which bucket are you filling up, right? Like you want to fill up the one that the more times you do it the right way, the more likely it's going to show up that way when you in the pressure of the heat, right? You're building muscle memory literally. And so however hard we push that, the slop still came out. Like it's built in where you're just, you kind of like throw your body around like a rag doll. That's how we warm up.
Right. You're literally just warming up, not performing.
I think that might be the difference, is like a men's warm up is a lot more of a roll around. And then like we kind of warm up on the events. Whereas like the girls have already done like a 16-mile run around the floor with their ankle mobs and their bunny hops. And then they're like almost semi cardio. And then we start the lines and we do the leaps and then we do the punches. And so like after 48 minutes of like truly warming up, then you get to the event, you are actually warmed up. So then it's like right to it, dialed in, precision. Whereas the guy like, we got done like rolling out, like we just got out of bed. And then it's like, oh, parallel bars. Now it's time to warm up, and you warm up like on the parallel bars. So that might contribute to this a little bit.
Yeah. But and I've heard that it's also like the mentality is like, just feel the equipment. Like I already know how to do the gymnastics. I just got to get the time of the equipment.
True. And some guys were neurotic about the grip on parallel bars, right? The grip was such a, you're baking cakes over there. You got honey. Some people got syrup. There's chalk, and like you're making a dough.
Yeah.
Who knows what's happening over there? Yeah, there's a lot of items from the baked goods tray in your kitchen over there by parallel bars. And so if you don't know, that's like, everyone's got their own mixture of how you get perfect grip. For me, I figured that out very early on. It's about figuring out that moisture. You want like a slight tack, and you cover it up with the topical chalk. And I actually used to run lessons, because this idea that like, you can't find my grip was trash. Like I need you to come over, and we would have like 30 minutes.
It.
Yes. And it was like, you must know how to do this. This is, this is as critical as anything. You don't have grip. So finding your grip on parallel bars was critical.
Did you make them answer you by saying, yes, chef?
I did. Yeah. And then if they didn't, I kicked them out immediately.
This is trash. So for the girls, it's
parallel bars is trash. Get out of here. Which might be a thing that you could actually say to a male college athlete, when you would never dream of saying anything was
better not. But for the girls, it's very similar with bars. I was going to say with regular bars, with uneven bars, but it's like you can see per country. Like one country will go in and it's like shake and bake. Like they get in there and they're, sawing it off and spraying and adding the stuff. And then the next one comes in. So, and a lot of it though, it's the ones that don't wear grips, which makes sense because guys don't wear grips either. Like that's for the ones that are super sensitive about it. But I think as far as warm-ups too, and like you and I have talked about this before, on the women's side, the coaching tends to, especially in the past, be way more micromanaged.
Yes.
They're micromanaging.
I'm gonna say we're tap dancing around, I think, a bigger issue, which is like the extreme diligent, hyper-focused routine and regiment that comes with your gymnastics development and approach to a competition, versus my personal favorite of just like, throw some more garbage in front of me and I'll just handle it because I'm an adaptive monster. And so like, but you need both. And I think but you do tend to see the two extremes pair up with the genders, if you will. You have the more hyper-focused, regimented structure on the women's side, and then you have the kind of like, just whatever, and you'll probably hit this routine, like on the men's side. And so I believe in a great combination of both. And so I feel like that's a big piece of what I've been bringing to this program specifically, is this like, because they've come from like a really structured elite. A lot of our girls came through the elite world. And so like getting them to realize they have investment in their journey, in their gymnastics, and we want them to have investment. We want them
They
to
have a say in what they do and what they need.
say. You have to realize how scary that is, though. You spent your entire career and upbringing sometimes literally being told you don't get to have an opinion here or a voice. In extreme cases, right? And then now we're trying to get them to not only have a voice, but to use it and to have an opinion, have really solid and concrete buy-in and investment, because I like this skill more because I've had an experience with this skill and it makes me feel nervous and me, even though I hit it all the time in practice. Like, those are really critical pieces to know when you're trying to seek perfection every Friday night at an SEC meet, you know, women's gymnastics.
And I hope at that point they do know what they need, and you know, that's a huge life skill. I think with girls too, like, from what I've seen, every gym is like so hyper focused on what's our thing, what's our, you know, what are we known for? We're this gym, we were really good in this area, blah, blah, blah. And so when a kid comes in, it's like, oh, this is how we do this here. This is how we warm up. This is the release everybody does. This is the way we do X, Y, and Z. This is what we wear on the award stand. This is how we march out. This is how we present when they announce our team. Like, everything is like, this is how we do it. And what you lose there is that individuality, because there are some gymnasts, and I'll say kids, because in that developmental level, dealing with a lot of kids, who are going to thrive off of a relaxed coaching approach, and some that are going to thrive off of a really intense coaching approach. Some are negative reinforcement kids, some are positive reinforcement kids. But when the whole thing is, this is what we do here, then you're missing out. And I learned this it was very obvious this one year where I decided with the level 9s, I think. I threw in a meet like right towards the end of the year before state championships. That was like a whatever meet. Like some in-house at some random gym, like an hour and a half away. They didn't know anybody, just really like low key. Cause it was at the point in the season where, like, you know, before states and regionals, everybody's stress level is like, right. I was like, we need to like
really matter.
Yeah. We needed a meet to take the pressure off, but to still get experience. And I thought I was doing it for them. And then I realized, holy shit, this is an opportunity for me, because I always would say almost the same thing to every single kid right before their beam routine. And if it worked on the first one, you better damn believe that on that next one, I stood in the same spot with the same, you know, with the same foot in front and said the exact same thing, and then pulled the board at the same time and walked away and stood in the same spot, because, you know, that affects their performance.
Yeah.
And what I was forgetting was there's a whole possibility out there that I'm selling them short or not providing them an opportunity because I won't change my approach. So I took that meet, and I remember the first kid who I was normally very like in her face, like not in an angry way, but just that's how we did it. And she always did well. And she was kind of expecting it. And I just patted her on the back and I go, all right, see you on the other side. And I walked away, like, just to see. And you know what? She did the same freaking thing she always did. Like, I really didn't have that much effect, but that's what I'm saying though. There's like, there's ways that I think coaches get a little too, I can't ever remember this word.
Whose show is this?
What? Yeah, well, exactly. Like, they think
that was one of the first
too much.
questions I asked Ashley. It was like, do you have like a rom-com final scene with all of your athletes before they do their beam routines? You know, like
right.
You can do this.
Right. You got this.
I believe in you.
Deep breath.
Yeah. And it's just like, I remember watching on TV and I'm like, that's a lot. And like, I don't know this gymnast, but it would appear to me she's miserable right now in this moment. And like, some people need that. Some people need the slap on the back, and some people need why are you looking at me? You got this, kid. And they're like, you're damn right I do. You know, and like, I think that is going back to your point of like the team versus individual approach. Like, I think that is the single biggest thing to figure out of what are the things that are undeniably specific, and we don't waver on those things for a team standpoint. And some of it comes into how we walk into the arena and how we present ourselves and how we dress, to how do we warm up and how do we approach our stretch, honestly. I think that's one of the biggest things that you have to figure out as a program, because you are compromising some of your, but sometimes you have to do that. For me, it was always the pommel horse guys doing some of the introductory leg stuff. They're like, it's literally counterproductive for me to make my legs bigger and stronger as a pommel horse specialist. And I'm like, you're not wrong, but in this moment, I need you to just be a team player. This little bit I'm not going to have you do the squats. We will tailor and hyper focus a little bit more on the post strength weights. But in this introductory kind of warm up strength, just kind of zip it and just buy into the team mentality. Okay, for me, big guy. And they're like, and they would offer suggestions, and to the point where I had to come up with like, literally, it was like a hypothesis testing. They were like, if you have suggestion to change, don't come with a complaint, come with a
solution.
Yes, come with a solution. They're like, instead of this, could we do planche leans? And I was like, if you are a pommel horse specialist, rather than that exercise, you can do the planche leans. And they were like, okay. And I was like, okay. And so I believe in that, right? But it's hard. It's hard because you want to make believe, or you want to stick to your guns. Like the whole team just does this.
But also that's because that's what works for you. And it's easier to have everybody do the same thing because then you can be consistent.
It is much easier, isn't it? But you're not maximizing your team, I don't think.
No. And another thing that's big on our side, I don't know if you experience this at all, but this whole thing with pressure sets during meet season. And the pressure set typically, let's say for beam again, is you have to hit your pressure set and then you get your assignment. So if you hit your pressure set, then you don't have as many routines. But if you don't hit your pressure set, then you have to do 75 routines. So then the question is, well, what does a hit actually mean?
Yeah.
And so, if you have a kid, which I did, that if her timing was just right and she really put everything into it, she would hit 180 on her switch leap. And that changed everything because then she'd get, guaranteed C, no deduction there. And then she would get the connection bonus for the thing that came after it. Like everything really on her routine rode on this switch leap.
Yeah.
And she was like 50-50 on hitting it properly.
You defined hitting that exact thing.
So that's what it would be. It's like, all right, I need to know that under pressure for you, Emma, that switch leap is the thing that's going to define it. And then blah, 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 blah. But also, I think it also becomes this thing where like these kids just warm up and try to stay on, and there's no improvement in technique once the season starts.
Well, that's the trick of anxiety of staying on or going big. And I think that's a huge
or getting better. Like there's that too.
Yeah,
you can improve during season.
Going big is doing the best version, even though you might fall off, right? Like you do a conservative series or something that just doesn't have the amplitude. It doesn't look like you're floating. You're like, that's not going to score well either, right? Like we need big routines and we need them to just crispy, focus, perfect, right? Especially in college. So like, how do you get them to do that when very often like the approach is to like, you kind of like you get the
hold back
the nerves, the butterflies, and then you hold back, and that's not going to result in a great beam routine.
I love that you just used the words series and amplitude.
What's happening?
That was great.
I don't even
beautiful.
I don't even dabble with beam, but I'm over there.
That was a beautiful thing.
I'm over there.
Don't you do
on occasion?
Didn't you do like try a switch half on beam or something, or a popa? You told me you got up there and did something and you had great amplitude, but not great split.
Girls were blown away that I didn't split the beam. I didn't tell them this, but I knew in my head I was like 0.5% from splitting the beam, and that I would never have lived in that. I would have never lived that down. Yeah. I also did a standing back tuck on a high ropes course beam.
Nice.
Yeah. And none of my team did anything.
That sounded pristine through their new microphone.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. It's my new toy for this mini series.
Yes.
Where we break it down. Yeah.
Break it down.
Yeah. The psychological approach of developing your individual. I watched and I knew I was going to bring this up because I fell in love with it so much. And it's where we are, big piece of what we're doing with our team. But I kind of thought about it a little bit with how you were breaking down your thing with Ella on beam. And it was the building trust with people or within organizations. And so I defined it a slightly different way. And I don't even remember how I did it on our team retreat, but the podcast I listened to defines trust as authenticity, empathy, and logic. Okay, and so logic being like they see the logic in your plan or your development, like the direction of the way that we're going. Think about it from a contractor standpoint, like, you run through like how they're going to fix your shower and they're like, we're going to tear your kitchen apart. And then you're like, wait, we're working on the back, right? Like, I don't trust this guy, even if you have to have all three pieces. And so like I think that's where the individual approach like allows the gymnast, one, if assuming you have the authenticity and you have empathy and they know you care about them, The logic then comes in when you actually individualize your approach for determining what constitutes a hit. And I think that's where we lose a lot of that trust, is where like a hit is the same for everyone.
Just stay on the beam by all means necessary.
Yeah, because you know, and then really the true hit is like the score, because the score reflects truly what a hit is. But then, you know, you pop into any NCAA meet, who knows what scoring is going to look like?
No,
which things are going to enforce or not enforce. So, and
I think there's a number 4 to that though, which is follow through. Like you actually got to do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
For somebody to trust then again, right?
But that's I feel like in the like the authentic piece, right? Like not following through, you'd be kind of a liar. And so you wouldn't be authentic in your person. I don't know. Wasn't my podcast. I just liked it as far as like what it takes to kind of bring to a relationship to help build trust to move on. Yeah.
I like that logic part
like
too.
The logic part was the thing that I think I didn't really necessarily put together, because you think that if you come and like everyone knows a trust building exercise, like tell like a personal growth story or whatever, like you share that. And so like that develops that like who you really are. And then if you really listen, you're developing some empathy of like what this person's gone through, and like, boom, trusting relationship. The logic piece is what I didn't really think. And then when you pull that out as a coach, how important it is for them to see and understand, like, why am I doing this drill when I'm actually trying to get this skill? Like this generation, I think more than ever now, needs to understand the logic behind, like, I know you have my best interests and I actually trust you because we've been together for 10 years now as an athlete, but this progression doesn't sit well with me. Like, why are we doing this again?
And that mind-body connection is so, and more if you're just doing it, like you're just doing hollow holds or you're doing hollow rocks. And as a coach, you're like, this is going to be so good for them for clear hips.
Oh, you know, the application 9 different ways. On every hip, right?
But all you're doing is getting a stronger hollow hold. But if a kid is actually doing that and thinking, drop, 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 and doing it in their brain.
Implementation of that, right? Like, where does that really show up in my gymnastics?
Yeah.
Versus like I like having this box off and we'll move on to the next thing, you know, like
I saw this cool drill on YouTube, so we're going to start doing it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same purpose.
The logic, connecting the logic for them is going to increase the trust and thus buy-in to doing and following through on those things.
Yeah. Yeah, we just got off the summer of a million Congress lectures, and after doing, you know, giving a whole lecture and providing all these different options for drills and this and that, I would always tell people, like, don't go back and start doing these because you like it. Like, oh, I love that one. That's cool. Like, what about it do you like? Or does it actually fit in all of these other things that you're doing? If not, wait, get through the cycle that you're in and then go back and make sure that it actually suits the rest of what you're doing. But I think that's a big thing that happens. You know, the coaches come back and they're so excited. I know that feeling and I think it's amazing, but then start just throwing all this new stuff because they saw it, instead of like marinate with it and figure out where does it fit. And the other thing is
developmental program as a whole, right? Like, what holes are you missing? Do you need this? Or do you need
it now?
Yeah.
Is it consistent with the other things that you're doing? Because there's more than one way to do things, believe it or not. That's why there's
in gymnastics.
There's so many.
No.
I mean, my way's the best, but there's, you know, a lot.
Yeah, mine too, for sure.
But there's the other aspect too of if you can't explain it simply, you simply shouldn't explain it. I can never say that right. Did I say it right?
Yeah, no, I like that. If you can't explain it,
if you can't explain it simply, you simply shouldn't explain it.
There it is. That's the one.